All right, so today I'm going to talk about high touch needs to lead the high tech. And I've been around the technology business, as you heard, 35 years. And, oh, my penguin fell down. I'll have to sit him up here. Okay. The penguin comes into the story. So you may have been hearing a lot in higher ed about how, there's Khan economy for online. MIT and Harvard and U of T and all these universities are doing virtual universities. And you would think that pretty soon there's going to just be virtual students and virtual teachers and that's it. Well, we can't have that happen. So you'll see these little penguins there, and they're going to pop up through my story because I really admire penguins, how they develop their processes to survive in the Arctic and the Antarctic, and how they do things together as parents and trade off jobs, and they interact, and they develop their best practices together. And that's how we have to do that to make sure we keep the face-to-face integration with each other ahead of the high tech and get the technology out of our way when we don't need it. Just use it when we need to and get it out of our way. So let me move to my next slide. Now, I couldn't get my dad to pose for this picture, so the penguin buddy stood in for him. And there's my dad watching old school picture-in-picture, 2 TVs at once. Now we have picture-in-picture on the big screen TV. So there he is, and whenever I think about that, I just think about how I grew up in a household where my dad would watch action sports because he was deaf. And so that was an easy thing for him to watch. My mom would like the Nature Channel, so he would have the penguins on for her. But if you forgive me for a moment, I just want to speak to my mom and dad, and I've arranged with the director, I'm going to speak to my mom and dad live webcast in my native virtual first language, which is sign language. But don't worry, we'll add audio for the hearing enabled. So just don't worry, just watch this. So Dad and Mom, here I am in this great center ice right near it. You understand there's no hockey. That's right, that's hockey stick. There's no hockey, but don't worry, you can watch me full screen, no picture-in-picture, so we'll talk to you later. Thanks. So thank you for that. Sure. Now, it's kind of interesting. In sign language, when we talk to each other, there's short forms for each other, like nicknames. So my dad, he's a big-chested guy, and his name is Chuck, so the letter C is on his chest, and it's Chuck. Now, my sign name growing up that my brothers and sisters would use all the time was this. Now, you're jumping to conclusions because that's sign for B-O-B. It's just that they did it very fast. All right, so now let me move on to the next one. So I've now joined my dad, and I'm looking up stats for him on the iPad, and we've got true picture-in-picture now. And there's somebody there doing sign language, understand. It's like putting a light bulb on beside your head. Now, when I actually signed to my parents, I said, you understand? I use my baby finger. That means I understand a little. So there's little nuances we can throw into the screen real estate. But I put that up with the captioning of the penguin hockey player because I had a great educational experience when I was here at Ryerson. These teachers, and I think even to this day as I've talked to them in the back room, are very high touch about getting all of you students involved in the real world as well as the technology. So they brought me along to CBC Hockey Night in Canada, which my dad thought was great. And what they wanted to do was add sign language to the live hockey games. And I went, what? And so we sat down, and I was talking to Frank Selke Jr. and all these people, and they were saying, oh, all the logistics and the costs involved and all the multi-layer technology we're going to have to get, and then we're going to have to, do we put the sign language in the lower left corner, or do we put it in the upper right corner? Where are we going to put this? And then they looked at me and said, well, you know deaf people, right? Your parents are deaf. Can you help us talk to the deaf and interpret, to explain what we want to do? And I said, well, sure, I'll help you do that, but aren't you making some assumptions here? Do you assume that they must have sign language? And they went, well, what do you mean? Why wouldn't they want sign language? That's their language. And I said, well, yeah, in the right place, in the right context. But I know my dad, he'll watch 2 hockey games at once. But to have sign language, to pay attention to what somebody's saying at the same time as the action, that may not be a good use of the technology or the screen real estate. And they looked at me like, really? And when I think about all the money it was going to save the Canadian taxpayer, you're welcome. It was great. So that's what they did. They went captioning. Now let me go on to the next one. Here's my granddaughter, Audrey. She's almost 3 years old, and her first sign word was cold. She lives in New Hampshire now, so she's cold. And here's the thing. We're in this arena, and we know that the great Gretzky's got to think where the puck is going. What I want you to do right now is, I know you're feeling a little chilly. I want you all stand up. Stand up right now. Stand up. And I'm going to give you a little experiential aid right now. Okay? And if you don't remember anything else about what I tell you in the next 15 minutes, I want you to remember this. So I'm going to teach you the sign for high touch. Put your hand up like this. Look at the back of your palm. Now, take your middle finger of your other hand. Now, be very careful. I'm not teaching you sign language that you do when you're cut off in traffic with your middle finger. Point it down. So you point it down, you touch your hand, okay? So that's touch. Now, take that same hand with the palm facing in or towards your tummy. Okay, now we're not hungry, we're just putting it to our tummy. Bring your other fingers and just wrap it around there and pull your fingers. It's not a joke, pull your fingers. That's lead or guide, okay? So high touch leads, and then technology, you have to be really careful with this one. That same hand, same middle finger, but now underneath, but with your palm, that's technology. And now here's the fun one. Tony Conte, before when he was talking, he was saying like, Mamma Mia. Bring your hands up like Mamma Mia, okay? And then just melt them down. Mamma Mia, we melt. So we melt the technology out of the way. You did a great job. Now before you sit down though, I want you to try that cold one more time. And just think about penguins and how they're cold in the Arctic, but they do things together to keep warm and do things. Well, I'm going to now show you the sign for penguins. It's one of my favorites. Drop your hands down by your side, point your fingers out, and just waddle back and forth. There you go. Now you may sit down. So now we're working together as penguins going farther together. Okay. Now I'm going to get my dad to change to the penguin channel for just a moment. And here we go. And so here's these penguins going farther together in the Arctic. And here's the media platform. And here's all these penguins. These are these best practice processes we do in the media business to help people. And pay attention, you're going to see that tip of the iceberg a lot, okay? That tip of the iceberg is where we as humans are going to be to create content together, to share content in YouTube, and to consume it together. But the technology is all underneath that water. And that's what we need to do. If we do the high-touch design well, we get rid of it underneath and we get it out of our way. So that's the key. So back to the penguin channel again. Here's a tale of two penguins. Now, these two penguins have two cell phones. How many people have cell phones with them today? Smartphones. How many people have a flip phone like this? I can't see it, but I don't think too many. So let me go to another close-up here. So here's two cell phones. And when I have people come into my office and we talk about how we're going to help them with their media designs and things like that, I say, you know what? It's like these old flip phones. They were hard to deal with, hard to put contacts in. I hated this phone, and if I left it at home, I didn't care. But now, I use a different phone. Most of us use an Android phone or Samsung or iPhone. This is a very different phone because it pays attention to that tip of the iceberg. When you get it out of the box, it's very touchy-feely. You can interact, get your weather, get your email, do all that stuff, and the technology is underneath. You don't have to care about that. Now, occasionally you have to do an upgrade or whatever, that's fine. But here's the thing. You can even add things to this to make them even more powerful for you. So if you can add a plug-in to it, suddenly you understand your work mail and your calendar, and no matter where you are, desktop, office, laptop, it's all synchronized together. So that's what we have to do, is get rid of that technology and advance it. So let me go a little further here. Here's three pictures. I love to show pictures of my grandkids and penguins. That's my favorite. So there's Audrey, she's 3. Georgia is only 4 months old. And I asked my daughter-in-law, who's a great photographer, and she tells lots of stories in her blog with just still images, which is great. And so there they are with the penguins, and she did me one better. She knew I was talking about high touch. She got them that moment of touching. Isn't that great? So she did a great job. There's my son throwing Audrey in the air, and there's Audrey with her favorite iPad. Now, think about those three pictures for a moment, okay? What's the story behind that? Well, here's the thing. My son is he went to school here in Toronto, went to Schulich School of Business, and now he's a Fulbright scholar, so he's well prepared as a digital native, and he's pursuing a master's in law and diplomacy at Tufts School, Fletcher School in Boston, and a MBA at the Tuck School of Business. It's hard for me to fit it all on his card, but he's there, and the point of it is that little Audrey, in her young life, has been a road warrior. And this iPad has been her friend and her ally, because she's going 8-9 hours back and forth from Boston to Toronto and New Hampshire to Toronto. There she goes. So she's over with her grandparents, and for the day, she's wearing us out, playing penguins and watching shows. And we're watching a show, and her parents come to pick her up. She says, oh, I don't want to leave. I want to keep watching the penguins. No, we got to get you going. And so as we're going out the door, she says, Daddy, just like great Gretzky, she's thinking, what's ahead? Where's the puck going? Am I going to have this 8-hour drive? She says, Daddy, don't forget the iPad. Because it's not because she wants the technology. She has a job for that technology to do. So our business school came to us, Schulich School of Business, and they have this flipped classroom model with busy executives where they have a binders of material and DVD video lectures, and they have to go over this material before they meet every couple of weeks face-to-face. It's the flipped classroom model, so you can use your face-to-face time better. But the design was really not that great because it didn't pay attention to the tip of the iceberg, get the technology out of the way. The DVDs were clunky and the binders. So we repackaged it all and put it on to an iPad. or an iPhone, and so they could interact with it much more easily, and it was a high-touch design to do it that way. So let me move on here. We package a lot of this stuff in our studio, which we like to think of as a high-touch studio. We have teleprompters and all that stuff, and we can do not just teleprompting, but web prompting or PowerPoint prompting. So while I'm looking at my PowerPoints, I can look right at the virtual audience. But you know what? It never stops. We have to keep designing. And my media producers are working with this professor. In fact, he's doing a live webinar this coming week. And this wasn't good enough. This technology was getting in his way. And we said, you know, but wait, we put a lot of time and effort into this. It's not working because he needed to see the students coming back to him, the two-way communication where we're raising the bar. So we said, okay, how are we going to do that? He said, well, all right, what we do is he wins a Penguin Award for the high-tech design, touch design with us, and we light a candle. And this is great because now we're recreating the screen so he can look and interact with the students. So this is taking it up further. The same professor 10 years ago was live webcasting from his classroom, and my daughter was in that class, and she could participate virtually or face-to-face and build her digital skills that she uses to this day as a conference producer working out of Chicago. She's here in Toronto actually doing a conference, but she does that interactive online stuff before you get together face-to-face, just like these organizers did for me to help me comfortable. So here now, I'm going to show you this very quickly. Here's an instructor or an instructional designer, and they're about to start the start of the semester. So they're going to request their course shell, and some of you as students may have participated in course websites. And at the same time, they can, with the tip of the iceberg story here, they can request to have a lecture capture as well. So here's two penguins again, of course. The penguin on the left with the night stocking, he had an inspiration in the middle of the night. He was looking at the course website and seeing where students were having trouble. And what he did was, rather than have to wait, he just logged in and recorded a little module, put a notice in the course website and said, I see some of you who are having trouble with this concept. Here's a different way of looking at it. Next morning, Penguin commuter students on the subway sees the notice on their smartphone, looks it up, and sees a different way to look at the problem or the challenge. So this is, again, I'll show you again, they're coming in to start the class, and all they have to do is have a computer with a mic, log in with their username and password, choose what course they want it to attach to, hit the record button, publish, and the technology melts out of the way. And like my granddaughter Audrey says, the technology doesn't have to be cold to you. It can melt right out of the way. Now, here we are. We take this out of the classroom to live events like this. We do live webinars, we do live town halls, and we do live graduation ceremonies. So here's what we're trying to do here. The story here is we want every student, it's a special moment. You guys are going to have that moment, a lot of you. And so we webcast around the world to 52 countries last year and to smartphones. We want every parent, every cousin, every second cousin watching wherever they are to share that, celebrate that moment with their name and their degree right on there, right at that second. So putting it on there is not that difficult. We have processes, Penguin processes, to do all this stuff together, but it is pretty complicated. This is underneath the tip of the iceberg. So what do we do here? It's a tip of the iceberg story. You'll see that person in the robe with the bracelet, she's accepting a name card as the students line up. Some of them are RSVP, some of them don't, some of them are sick that day. They get out of order. The key is getting it in the right order. That's the story. So she receives it, and the technology was made so easy as this is a full-time person that doesn't do webcasts. They have to work with us to do this, and she said she's willing to come back because the technology wasn't so cold, didn't get in her way. We got them in the right order. The student sitting in the front is actually, I told you about my experience with CBC Hockey Night in Canada and that great experience of that and how good I felt. Well, he had the experience of designing the middleware, the interface between the video technology and this barcode of scanning the students to make sure everybody's in the order. And if there's a change, you can drag and drop it and just make it that simple. All right. So I hope you're understanding a lot and not just baby finger a little about how important it is for the high touch to be in front of the technology. And we're back here with the captioning hockey. And I'm going to finish up here with my favorite picture of granddaughters and the penguins. And here's the thing. Why do we do this? It takes time. It takes effort. There are easier ways to do this. Let the technology handle it. But it is important to do it, and here's why. Audrey and George's Oma. They call my son's family the Jetson family. And if you don't know that cultural reference, well, my granddaughter's probably already logged into Wikipedia and looked it up. It's a family that could work together and interact, and the technology get out of their way. But I actually have a more personal reason for it. And that is that my mom, who's deaf, wasn't born deaf. She had an accident when she was small, about Audrey's age. And here's the thing. She encouraged me and I'm sure many of you had parents and relatives that did this, to pursue higher education, to pursue your dreams. And many of us maybe had parents that didn't go to university. My mom actually did try. She applied, she just didn't tell them she was deaf, because in that time, there weren't the supports, and she was pretty aggressive about finding out. Today, a lot of the stuff we do with high touch not only helps everyday students and digital natives and digital naturals, but people who have vision issues or sign language or deaf. This is why we do it. We're in higher education to leave it a bit better than we found it. So as I come close to my closing here, I just want to end off with you by saying, very simply, while you're sitting there, just think high touch leads the technology to melt away. And I'll just add a postscript to that. If we do the touch right, then that cold feeling about technology when it gets in our way, we break that barrier and we lead to better understanding. So my penguins and I, we thank you very much.